Hello. What I'm going to do in this tutorial is demonstrate a way to make global variables be displayed within a terminal. So this is a little bit like in the Nuka World DLC when you deposit your Nuka World tickets for terminal updates to show how many tickets you've deposited in total and how many tickets are like deposited on your account and things like that, and that can be raised or lowered and then it's updated in the terminal. So first of all, we're going to need to create a global that we want to display. We're going to need to create a terminal to display it, and we're going to need to create a quest to handle the updating of that global. So I'll just create the global first, because this only takes a minute, and then we can just sort of set it and forget it. So I'm just going to call it tutorial underscore display global. And we want to leave it, we don't want to make it constant, because we're going to be updating it, because that's the point of having it. Just give it any value. I'm going to set it at 2, but because this global isn't really doing anything in the tutorial, it doesn't actually matter what the value is. Like, it doesn't represent anything. It's just for demonstration purposes only. So next up I'm going to create a terminal, and I'm just going to edit an existing one. So best ones to do are just to edit the default ones, because these don't really, these don't really do anything. Default terminal desk. Just give it a unique ID, tutorial underscore display terminal, and just give it any name. Display terminal. I think I've done a tutorial covering terminals in a little bit more detail, so I'm just going to be doing the most basic thing possible. I'm going to right click new in here and create a new entry. Let's write our global is here. So now I'm going to go into this display text, and I'm going to just write in our global is, and open this less than more than sign, and I'm just going to write global equals tutorial underscore display global, and that is the ID, this here, of a global that we just made before. And this whole syntax, it can go anywhere, so I could just copy it into here. If I wanted to display the global here, I could create an entry up here and copy it into there, but the purposes of this tutorial, this is just what I've decided. So I'm just going to OK and create a new form on that and save. And now I'm going to look it up again, because we're going to have to create in fact, no, we're not going to do that. We were going to create the quest first, actually, because we're going to need to refer to this quest in the script we're going to create later. So we're going to right click, new, tutorial underscore display quest, so long as it's a unique ID, it doesn't matter. Priority, it's fine to hit 0. And I'm just going to hit OK there. Double click back in, we now got all these options. So you'll see here there's a thing text display globals. So this is where we're going to put in any globals that we want to be accessed by this quest and used in any text display. So I'm going to right click new, and we're going to look up the global that we made earlier, which is called tutorial underscore display global. Put it in there, nice and simple. So next we're going to have to create the script to actually update the global variable. So this is going to be used by the terminal when we want to check the value of the global and put it in. So I'm going to add a script, create a new script. I'm just going to call it tutorial underscore display script. Okay. I'm just going to cancel that because I'm not going to use that. Right click, edit source. And so just what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a little function to update the global that is stored within the quest. So first of all, I'm going to want to create a global variable property with the ID of our global. I'm just going to give the same ID, which was tutorial underscore display global. And I'm going to give it the auto and constant flags because we're not going to be changing anything. So all we need to do is create a very brief function. So I'm going to write function global update, open brackets, close brackets. That can be called anything that you want. You could call it, cheese, and it would be fine. Obviously it's sensible to just call it something that relates to what you're actually doing. So all this function is going to do is update the global. So I'm going to update current instance global, and now the property that is pointing to our variable, which I gave the same name as the variable itself, tutorial underscore display global, like that. Hopefully I spelled that right. And then I'm going to end the function because it's literally all that that does. And I've saved that and that's compiled successfully, so I've not spelled anything wrong. Close that. And I'm just going to go to the properties and I'm going to fill in this property. And because I've given it the same name as the global, if I hit autofill, it will automatically fill that property. As I've said in other tutorials, you can just select it from this list and you could, in theory, put any global in here. It doesn't have to be the one that's got that name. I just always give them the same name because it sort of helps me keep track of it. So next thing we're going to want to do is work on the terminal. So I'm just going to navigate back to the terminal, display terminal like that, and we're going to add a script to this terminal. And I'm going to give it a new script. Tutorial underscore, just give it a unique ID, display terminal script. That'll do. Cancel that. Right click, edit source, and type it in directly. Okay, so the first thing we're going to want to do is create a property to point to the quest that we made to do the handling of all this stuff. So that was quest property tutorial underscore display quest, and because we're not going to be doing any changes, the auto and the constant flag are fine. So first things first, we're going to want to run this script when the player activates the terminal. So we're going to write event on activate, and we're going to need to pass some arguments to this event, and that argument is just going to be object reference action ref, and you can write, I think you can write anything you want in here, but this is like the official syntax that the game uses, so I just give it the same name, doesn't really matter. But basically, this will be telling the event what object reference has activated it, and so this is just the ID that we're giving to that object that does the activation. So we're going to be checking if action ref, i.e. the thing that has done the activating, equals game.getPlayer. So we just want to make sure this is only happening when the player activates the terminal. We don't want it to be happening if an NPC does it, for example. So now we're going to want to actually call the function. So we're going to need to put in open brackets, the ID of the quest, which is tutorial underscore display quest. But we're actually going to want to call on the script. So we're going to write as, and then we're going to put the name of the script that we attached to that quest, which was tutorial underscore display script, close brackets. And then we're going to put the name of a function that we created. So this is what we're actually going to call the function, which is global update. And then we're going to want to force the player now to properly activate the terminal. Activate game.getPlayer true. And we're going to end that if statement and end the whole event. So there we go, save that, no issues there. So finally, one thing that I want to do is I want to block the player's ability to activate the terminal themselves. I only want them to be able to activate it via this script. So they will not actually enter the terminal until the script has run. So I'm just going to do event on cell attach. So that will run as soon as the terminal loads into the cell, essentially. Block activation true end event. There we go. So what will happen is the instant the terminal is loaded into the cell, you won't be able to activate it, so you will not actually be able to enter the terminal. So if a player does attempt to activate it, if somebody activates it, we will check that that is the player. We will call the function attached to the script that we wrote earlier to update the globals, and then we will forcibly activate the player. So what will happen is there'll be a slight delay. It depends on how many globals you're updating. The same thing does happen in the vanilla implementation of this as well in the Nuka World one. That is why if you ever activate that Nuka World terminal, sometimes it takes a couple of seconds because it's updating most globals. So we're going to need to fill in most properties. And again, I've given it the exact same name as my quest, so we can just autofill it. There we go. Okay. Okay. Save. So there's now one final thing that we need to do, and that is we need to place the item in the world for terminal, and then we need to create an alias that is going to point to the terminal. So those are the two things that we're going to do. Okay, so here I am at Abernathy Farm, which is the location that I do all this stuff at for some reason. So now we just need to click and drag our terminal into the world so the player can actually use the terminal. Hopefully the player will be able to use it at that height. If I enable markers, I'll be able to see. Yeah, he's kind of floating. Let's just make the terminal float. It's any tutorial. It doesn't really matter if it looks normal or not. Just put it in, floating in the air. Doesn't matter. And now we're going to want to go back to our quest. I'm just going to save that, as I do after every single thing that I do. Display quest. And I'm just going to create an alias to point to the terminal, because this won't work if we haven't done this, because it can't access the globals if I haven't done this. Specific reference, select forced reference, reference vendor window. Oh no, make sure you're not clicking on something that isn't the actual object. You might have to get kind of close. There we go, tutorial display terminal. Okay. No, we don't want to do that. I never like to mess around with location stuff when it's vanilla. And we're going to want it to use stored text. I always click both of these, so I'm never sure exactly which one does which. So I always click both of these, uses stored text and stores text, because we will be storing some text, i.e. the global variable. Save that, save that. And that should be everything set up. So now what will happen is the player will activate this terminal, and when they do, it will call this function attached to this script, which is attached to this quest, and then it will force the player into the terminal. And what that function will do is it will simply update the globals, and we've only got one global to update, so it'll update that one global. And that global is this one right here, which I think I gave a default value of 2, but I'll be changing it via the console just to demonstrate it updating. So now I'm going to go into the game and demonstrate that working. Okay, here we are in the world. My terminal should be floating here. Oh, I think it's at the wrong height. I don't think I can get into it. Okay, yeah, might want to adjust that height because I had to fiddle around a little bit to actually get myself into the terminal. But our global is 2. Excellent. So we're going to want to back out of that, and I'm going to update the actual global. So what was it called? Underscore tutorial underscore display global, right? Hopefully I got that syntax right. Okay, so now our global is 5. So that's everything. Hopefully that was useful. Hopefully that height that was related to the height of the terminal. I moved it around. I had to move it around a little bit to get myself to actually go in it. But yeah, hope that's that working. Hopefully that was clear. Hopefully that was useful. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.